Well, doing something a little different this week.
Yeah, I'm going to open a beer for this one.
Yeah, we've had some really exciting news this week, but I think also everybody's feeling a little bit of the less than ideal current events that are in the news right now.
That's for sure.
And it's been quite a whirlwind for us. Really, all of us that have been working on this book over this last year. It's been really interesting. You know, we started this book and everything with Afghanistan and what was happening over the last couple of days. You know, Afghanistan's been falling really for the last 9 days now. We're recording this on Sunday, August 15th. But it's been falling for a while, a little over a week. Mm-hmm. But the acceleration that's happened in the last few days has been incredible. And the Taliban taking ground and just taking over the provinces. And to kind of give you guys a little bit of background. So because of all this happening, Tom Amenta, one of the co-authors of the 20-Year War, was basically gave his thoughts to a journalist of the Washington Post. And just, you know, told him basically he was heartbroken. He gave exactly how he felt. His exact thoughts is, you know, why were we doing this? Why are we in this war? You know, if we are just going to turn over the keys right back to the Taliban, what was the point of this?
Yeah, and I kind of looked at it differently in the beginning because obviously as a civilian, I don't have any emotional ties. But it was kind of interesting to talk more with you and put myself in the shoes of the Afghani people who have basically been, you know, free or had more rights, I would say, in the past 15 years, maybe even a little bit longer. And then to have those rights stripped all over again, I can see why it's affecting a lot of our soldiers and why everyone's pissed at the current administration for not doing anything about it.
Yeah. And you know, we're going to dive into a little bit of everything that's been going on lately. And again, this is not our typical podcast format. We typically have a guest. We want to tell veteran stories, but you know, this podcast was built really behind the idea of building this book, The 20-Year War. And now that this war is coming to an end, and it's coming to an end in a way that I don't think anybody wants. I don't think you could talk to a single veteran who's happy with how everything's turning out. I don't think you could probably talk to a majority of civilians who are just a little bit in the know of what's going on. That would be happy.
I think, like you said, even though we have a guest on each week, I think this episode, we're going to keep it short and kind of get everyone caught up. But I think we're more speaking for veterans as a whole.
Yeah.
And what maybe they're going through, and maybe it'll help kind of calm their nerves a little bit by hearing a veteran like Dan, you know, talk about his experiences overseas and how he feels about this whole situation. I think we'll have like a clip that we'll bring up and we'll kind of break it down and talk about from a recent interview that Tom was on. But after that kind of sour intro, the books are here.
Yeah. No, we have exciting news. Again, it's been a sad week, but at the same time, an exciting week. As you can see in the background, you know, we've got some books up on the shelf, and we're actually going to be shipping books starting this week. So I want to dive a lot more into this after we get through kind of some of the sad stuff, but it is very cool to finally have a tangible object in our hands. And let me tell you, this thing is not only massive, but it's beautiful.
Yeah, I don't want to open it up and spoil too much, but we've got books in. They're ready to ship. We're super excited. We've been working on this for the past almost year.
Yep.
And it's basically ready for you guys now. So we'll talk more at the end. We'll get more into what this main topic of this episode's about, but we're at least excited that we got this during the weekend while it's such a blue weekend. And we've been constantly being hammered by every news media team. I think you've been on 3 or 4, if not more, this weekend.
I've been on 5 now.
Tom's been on 4 or 5, between MSNBC twice, CNN. News Nation twice, CNN.
We even got called up by a French media agency. We even got called up by a Russian media agency, and let me tell you, we were very quick to say, I don't think that this would be in our best interest to give our thoughts on this topic. But but yeah, it's been really interesting. And again, I understand why they came to us. They specifically, came to Tom and I. Both of us are Afghanistan combat veterans. We've had multiple tours there. We wrote the book, The 20-Year War. So already there's a lot of tangible ties into what's going on right now in Afghanistan. And so I understand why they wanted our thoughts on what's going on. And it was difficult to answer some of those questions. And it was especially difficult for me. Tom has a much stronger opinion on, what's going on. And I appreciate that. And I know a lot of veterans do. I try to take things more from the 30,000 foot view. And I tried to answer questions in a way that's like, I'm not representing all veterans. I'm giving my opinion only. Anything that I said was trying to be as factually correct as I could, or as accurate to my belief as I could. Anything that was factually incorrect, I'll apologize to anybody out there, but it was not my intention to be wrong. But I don't think I said anything that was factually incorrect. But yeah, it's been a whirlwind the last 36 hours. I mean, since that Washington Post article came out, we just been getting hit up left and right to kind of give our thoughts. And it's been a mix of recorded interviews that have been kind of chopped up and plugged into some, live media, and then live on air.
We'll share all that too. We'll put links in this episode. We don't want to waste your guys' time for this episode, but if you guys are curious and you want to watch some of the news networks that had Tom and Dan on, at least you can kind of get more of a perspective of how they feel live while it was happening this weekend.
So what I want to do is kind of, again, give my take. And again, this is only my voice, but I do have a feeling that a lot of veterans probably will resonate with what I have to say.
Yeah, I think so.
And I think it's also important that we have the conversation, because when we started talking about it, over the weekend, but even over today, this morning, like I kind of had to check you a little bit.
Yeah.
But, and I feel like that's okay.
I woke up in a pretty sour mood.
And no, but I think that's okay. I think I don't think that there's a lot of people in the civilian population, only I think about 1.5% of the American population has served in combat in the conflict that happened in Afghanistan. That's such a small percentage of the American population that it would be unreasonable to think that every American is going to be upset about what's happening.
Yeah. And I think, like I said at the beginning, I think it was more like me seeing it from an unemotional, unbiased perspective.
Yeah.
Is because I'm looking from the outside in. So I basically see a country that has struggled for so long with Taliban forces or people taking over and, taking away their freedoms, to where I looked at it as a perspective as like, well, like no matter how much we're there to help it, they're never going to change. Like there's always going to have monsters coming out in the shadows and attacking these people. And like, why should we risk any more soldiers' lives on our end? And then you kind of corrected me, and I started thinking, well, now that I put myself in those shoes, let's say if somebody came to the United States, a force, and didn't allow us to vote or do whatever we wanted, took all of our rights away, and was stoning my family in the streets and doing all that. And I was like, actually, I can see why a lot of veterans are pissed off for all their efforts, their brothers and sisters that were lost. So it's interesting to hear it from your perspective, and then for me to kind of flip it. And I think that's what we want to talk about. And maybe there's people like listening that don't know much about it, or maybe they have the same view as me, and they're like, originally like, well, fuck it, we can't change anything. But hopefully by watching it or hearing mostly Dan talk from his, being a veteran, I'm hoping we can kind of figure out what's going on and how we can maybe solve it if we can.
Yeah. So let's start at the very beginning and at least give the political justification of why we entered Afghanistan. I won't get into any conspiracy theories. I'm not even going to address any of them.
Damn it.
I'm just going to talk strictly from what's out there, why, whatever the narrative is, why we entered Afghanistan in the first place. So September 11th, 2001, obviously the Twin Towers were attacked. Twin Towers fell. Pentagon was attacked. Another airliner, Flight 87, supposedly the
crash got taken over and crashed in Virginia, wasn't it?
Yeah, so it got hijacked by terrorists, and then the passengers tried to take back control, and then it's the wreckage is scattered all over Virginia. Again, not going into conspiracy theories at all.
Yeah, not here for that right now.
During the investigation, they found out there was a lot of backing and financial ties to Al Qaeda, which at the time Osama bin Laden was kind of the leader of Al Qaeda, and he took ownership as well of the attacks of 9/11. We already had intelligence that Al Qaeda was being harbored, or had safe harborage in Afghanistan, because the Taliban were in support. They got a lot of whatever it was. They were allowed to do whatever they wanted in Afghanistan. So the U.S. made the decision that, all right, we're going to war with Afghanistan. We've got to fight the Taliban, because obviously they're leaving the door open for terrorists to flourish in that country, and we can't have that.
Mm-hmm.
And so October 7th, we had some pre-forces that came before then, but October 7th, 2001, during Objective Rhino, Rangers from 3rd Ranger Battalion jumped in to the airfield. I believe it was Bagram Airfield. If I got that wrong, I'm sorry, but believe jumped into Bagram Airfield and took control, and that was the first footprint that we had on the ground. So
in Afghanistan,
that's right. So fast forward, or actually don't fast forward, but from that point forward, everybody in America knew that we were at war.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very clear enemy who we were going after.
Yeah.
We know what we were doing. Everybody who enlisted, everybody who re-enlisted knew that this was an ongoing war effort, that if you signed up or if you extended or whatever the case may be, you may not have known exactly what you were getting yourself into. I don't think anybody ever did, but you at least knew there's an ongoing war.
You roughly knew what you were signing up for.
Yeah, and you knew that you were serving your country. You were there for a greater cause, right? You were there for some reason. I don't think, some people, even though they say it, they joined the military for free college. Like, that's probably a motivating factor, but I guarantee you don't just join the military and stick with it just for the free college.
No, you're pissed off and you want to fight.
Yeah, there's a reason to be there, right? There's a higher calling, a greater service, whatever it may be. So I joined right out of high school, age 17, and served for 6 years. Did my first 3 tours to Iraq, and then my last 3 tours to Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
So from when I saw it, and again, this is my perspective, 2009, 10, and 11 are the 3 years that I deployed. There was clearly a transition trying to happen. There was clearly a time where we were taking operational precedence in my first deployment, where we were leading all of the point raids. But then we eventually tried to transfer power to the Afghanis. We trained them. We wanted them to take ownership of their country. We wanted them to take control of, fighting back the Taliban.
That was like rebuilding their government.
All of it. Yep.
Okay.
Building up schools, giving more freedom, allowing people to have voting rights, really pushing back the Taliban to have a presence and the ability for people to vote freely, feel safety and security, move about their country freely, give women's rights, ability for women to own businesses.
That's a huge thing right now too, that's taken away.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I want to talk about all of those. But yeah, it gave the freedom to own businesses, to go to school, to just do a lot that previously was not viable under Taliban rule. During that same time, we obviously also brought in a lot of people, interpreters, contractors, people, support folks that wanted to, build up the infrastructure, support the infrastructure of our military bases. So a lot of people that were contracted, that were Afghanis, that were either, like I said, interpreters, just worked on the base, cleaning things, setting up stuff, construction, whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. So we also hired a lot of workers. So we obviously built up a significant amount of support in Afghanistan. And then in 2011 is also when Osama bin Laden was killed. I think it was April or May 2011. Mm-hmm. So when I deployed my last time, I really thought that was going to be towards the end.
I thought that was
of the conflict, because we already pushed a lot of the terrorist networks largely out of Afghanistan. Obviously, there was still a presence there. Taliban never went away, but they did basically go into hiding.
Well, we took out a lot of their main leaders leading up to Osama bin Laden. Basically, like, one door to the next to figure out more info where he was at.
Yeah.
If I'm correct. And then obviously, I mean, you probably pecked off a lot of the bigger people in the Taliban.
Yeah,
and like
absolutely.
you said, they went into hiding and then ISIS formed.
So ISIS is a kind of a different thing that flourished and formed. And I believe that really spawned out of northern Iraq and the southeastern Syria border. That's kind of where that flourished.
Yeah, you're right.
Now, it did make its way into Afghanistan, but that was a little bit later. Kind of once their presence was being pushed out of Syria and Iraq, they found safe harbor again in Afghanistan. So, and I believe ISIS still has a small footprint there, so they haven't gone away. But it is part of the bigger conversation as well. So, I got out in 2012. I really thought the war in Afghanistan was going to end. Like, I thought, all right, this maybe has a year or two longer.
Yeah.
This is it. Little did I know it was going to go on for another decade.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy.
It's insane to think about. Like, really insane to think about that. I was already a decade into it. I thought maybe a year or two, and I think a lot of people probably did, and then it went on for another decade. It's
crazy, like some of the people that we know that we've interviewed for this book that have had like 18 deployments.
Yeah. I mean,
and I'm like, what?
When I got out in 2011, you know, one of my really good friends who ended up being killed in action in 2011, he had 14 deployments at the time.
Insane.
Like, it's insane and unfathomable.
Half your life is spent at war.
Yeah. A lot of people, especially in special operations, you know, half of your time is really spent overseas.
Yeah. So it validates the point as to why veterans now are upset, is because if you've spent half your life fighting alongside another country for their freedoms, it's gonna psychologically not mess you up, but it's definitely gonna
it's gonna mess a lot of people up for sure.
It's gonna be ripping the Band-Aid off.
Yeah. No,
an old wound. And just basically, I get why a lot of these veterans are saying, or they're questioning, you know, was this war all for nothing? But I think there's a bigger message behind that it's not so much that it was for nothing.
Yeah. So this year, or really it started last year, the U.S. started getting involved very heavily. Like, there have been, you know, times over and over again, we've tried negotiating with the Taliban. It hasn't worked. Over and over again, tried negotiating, didn't work.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Was it when the Trump administration came in is when we really started heavily going there again?
Yeah. And it was because, and again, I might have this slightly wrong, but I'm pretty confident the Trump administration made a statement saying we are going to leave Afghanistan, but we have to have the Taliban come to the table.
Yeah.
But the second that they heard that we were going to pull, basically, we wanted to leave the war entirely, that's when they were like, all right, now we can talk, because previously you hadn't said you were pulling everybody out. Now you're saying you're going to pull everybody out.
Yeah.
Now we'll talk to you.
Okay.
So started the negotiations, I think in multiple places, but really where the latest negotiation has been and where the agreement
with the Taliban
has been is in Doha. And kind of a shady situation. We've tried in the past having, you know, the Afghan government, the U.S. government, and the Taliban kind of sit together and come up with a solution. Hadn't come up with a solution. And it seemed, and I don't know, and this is just based on reporting, I don't know if this is 100% factual, but it seemed as though we pushed the Afghani government kind of to the side and said, all right, well, we're going to negotiate directly with the Taliban. So we kind of negotiated on behalf of the Afghan government. Now, I don't think that that's that big of a deal, personally.
No.
We've been kind of, you know, propping them up for 20 years. We did need to come up with some sort of exit strategy. We got to get out of there. I mean, we spent almost $1 trillion in that country. We've lost countless lives in that country. Our whole goal was to establish a democracy there that would flourish and really be able to support itself.
So, and then going forward, let's say, I think it was almost a month ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, the rough time frame. Obviously, we've been working for years and years, establishing security, training these Afghani troops, and building up their own military and presence there. And then as of, I think, a month ago, 3 weeks ago, correct me if I'm wrong, overnight, we just pulled out. Like, basically left Bagram Airport.
Yeah, Bagram was the big one that was in the news. And
we basically, and I remember seeing on the news that a lot of the, Afghani soldiers and commanders were like, they didn't even say goodbye.
Yeah.
Like they just dipped out overnight.
Well,
where's the Americans?
And I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of people still are talking about this. And again, I can't tell you for certain what has happened on the ground, but I can understand people's frustration. But when it comes to entering or leaving a battle space, typically we don't tell people exactly when that's going to
strategy
happen.
And it protects people.
Yeah, it just protects people because if you told somebody, hey, I'm leaving at 9:00 local tomorrow,
you could be ambushed.
Who knows? They could push out that information. You could be ambushed. I mean, they could legitimately slaughter a lot of people at one time because they know exactly when you're leaving.
Yeah, that's a good
So
point.
we leave it open on purpose. I think that's what happened personally. And again, that's my personal belief, is probably they said, hey, we're going to be leaving in the next couple of days. Probably the Afghanis were expecting some sort of formal handover.
Yeah.
That was like, here's all the equipment we're leaving behind.
Here's
everything. Here's the keys to this. This is how this works, blah, blah, blah. And we didn't do that. We just said, all right, we're gone. Like in the middle of the night. Vanished. Yeah. So, I understand why a lot of people are not happy about that.
I think we probably had enough presence though, even us leaving them randomly, that they kind of already had formal training and possibly knowing how to regulate and run the country before we dipped out.
I mean, we've done so much for.
I don't think we would have left if we didn't believe that they could hold their own.
Well, all right, and then we're going to play this clip in a minute, but even Biden said back in April that there's never going to be a case where we pull out of Afghanistan and the embassy people are going to be airlifted out of the embassy, or that he doesn't believe the Taliban are ever going to be able to take back over the country.
That's happening now.
I mean, I don't know if you've been watching the news, but
let's find that.
It's been pretty quick.
Let's find that clip because I know Tom's on it at the end.
Yeah, so
I'm curious to hear you break it down.
We're gonna kind of walk through this a little bit and pause a few different times because it does kind of highlight everything that's happened over the past couple of days, or past couple months rather. And it's really interesting. This was one of the news stations that Tom and I both got interviewed for. So, and it's kind of frustrating how they cut it together, but that's what producers do. That's what news networks do, is they try and find that one clip that's going to get people, heated up
on the edge of their seat,
and be like, oh, I got to hear more, and so that's what they did in this clip. And, that's what I expect.
Yeah. We'll watch it and we'll be quiet so you guys can hear, and then we'll pause it every once in a while and let you guys kind of hear our opinions on it. But yeah, it has been a crazy weekend with all this stuff going on. Oh, of course we got little ads.
Excuse the ads.
The Taliban are sweeping across Afghanistan, taking control of at least 30 of its 34 provinces over the last 10 days and their provincial capitals, including Afghanistan's second and third largest cities. Now they're in Kabul. Just last month.
I mean, if you just look at that map in itself, right?
All that red is Taliban?
All that red is now Taliban control.
Wow.
And several months ago, like the Taliban have always held very small regions of Afghanistan. I think at one point they didn't really control anything, but there's always been a conflict. There's always been like, all right, you can control this little area. We'll keep you, confined to your little space. But the fact that it's expanded so quickly in 10 days, realistically, to take over 95% of the country is just insane to fathom.
Just last month, President Biden promised
there's going to be no circumstance where you see people being lifted off the roof of a embassy.
But now, President Biden has ordered troops back in Afghanistan, raising the total to 5,000 to secure the evacuation of the U.S. Embassy, which has now begun. The embassy staff have been instructed to shred sensitive documents and destroy computers. The airport is now the only safe way in or out of Afghanistan.
That's one of the reasons why we move these.
So basically people are being airlifted out of the embassy.
Now, they're not airlifted off the rooftop. There's been a few images being circulated right now.
They're making it look that way.
They're making it look that way. And I get it. Like it does look bad. I don't think they're being airlifted off the rooftop. They have a landing pad that's right next to the building.
Yeah.
But they are burning documents. They are, burning computers, destroying computers, things like that. Everything that you have to do when you escape an embassy. But here's the problem that I have with it is if we knew we were going to leave the embassy and we knew that this day was coming, this shouldn't have been a scramble to get all this done. You know what I mean?
Those people should have already been out of there.
They should have been out of there. Like nobody was assuming that the Taliban were going to be able to do what they did. But let me tell you, for somebody who's fought the Taliban, they're incredibly smart. They're incredibly crafty. There's a reason why there have been 3 major countries who have had a conflict in Afghanistan: the British in the 1800s, the Russians in the 1980s.
The Russians, China has issues with them.
China's always had small issues with them. And then the U.S. obviously is 20-year war. But there's a reason why the Taliban always come up on top. They know their land. They know what they need to do. They don't try and fight overnight. They try and fight the long war. They can outlast anybody. So they've been planning for this, I guarantee, for months, if not years.
Jeez.
They knew that this day was coming. They knew that we were going to completely withdraw. The second that it happened, that the last few troops were pulled out of the last remaining satellite bases. So there was still some troops, I believe, in Bagram, in Kabul, even throughout this week. But the second that they were pulled out everywhere else, the Taliban were like, all right, it's time. Let's start taking them down. And what they did is it was like a domino effect. They just started taking down one small province after another until they built up enough fighters to where it's like you bring in several hundred, several thousand people into a province and you stand in front of the Afghani military or Afghani police. Of course, they're not going to try and fight.
Yeah.
They don't have any reinforcements. They don't have anybody there for backup. It's just them against the hundreds and thousands of Taliban that are standing in front of you.
And that's kind of how they started to slowly take over the rest of the country.
And the other thing that's been being reported lately, and I 100% believe this, is they've been able to strengthen remarkably fast because they're clearing out all of the military and police prisons. And they're just absorbing more and more Taliban
just getting
fighters.
More old friends coming
So
in.
again, when I was in Afghanistan in 2009, we were still, I don't know how best to say this, but basically taking prisoners out of the country. They weren't left in Afghanistan. We were
like
still
Guantanamo.
we were still using Guantanamo Bay and stuff like that. We had other places to, house prisoners. But my last deployment in 2011, we had a transition agreement, and every Afghani that was ever taken into custody had to go through the Afghani court system and then was then imprisoned there in Afghanistan. Unless they had some crazy war crimes against the U.S. or something like that, then I think we still deported them or whatever. But I think for the most part, every Afghani that was ever taken into custody stayed in Afghanistan.
Interesting. I want to see the rest of this one and see where it goes.
We move these forces, or we're moving these forces into Kabul to assist with this particular mission because we know that time is a precious commodity here.
Just 1,200 Afghans who work for the United States as interpreters or in other jobs have been evacuated to the United States. Roughly 88,000, including family members, could need to be evacuated, according to a nonprofit advocacy group.
We have a sacred moral obligation to help those who have helped us, and we're not walking away from that.
And the United Nations is warning of a larger humanitarian disaster.
If they arrest us, they will kill us. Everyone, they will kill us.
Given the situation right now, how do you see the future for women?
Before we get into the women thing, I do want to address that. So again, there's been this movement for months now. Really, it's been years, but really the last couple months is when it's been the biggest. Is everybody knew we were leaving Afghanistan. The Taliban were slowly starting to take control of small areas. And there were already reports of them finding interpreters basically and slaughtering them.
Jeez.
And so there was a huge push to get all of the interpreters, Afghan interpreters, out of Afghanistan as fast as possible. So they were starting basically the passport program, like getting visas, getting these Afghan interpreters visas. I can't remember the name of the program that they started up, but it was to accelerate the process so that Afghans could get their visas faster and get out of the country. Still not fast enough. You saw they said only 1,200, but there's 88,000 who were either contracted, supported, or immediate family members.
That's crazy.
Of those that were contracted or supported. So
shit ton of people.
If we knew that this was coming or that this was going to happen, I don't know why we didn't accelerate things faster.
Yeah.
I don't know why we didn't have a policy that was like, all right, let's stay in place, provide safety and security for these people that we know are going to flee Afghanistan, and let's get them out first before we just completely pull everybody out. Because obviously the Taliban wasn't upholding their end of the bargain, that they were going to cease fire, that they weren't going to do anything, they weren't going to press until we had all troops out, until a certain date. I can't remember exactly what
they
date
just
it
went
was.
back on their word.
And they just went back on their word, and they obviously started taking over the country a lot faster than we expected.
Yeah.
And now we're deploying 5,000 troops there. From what I heard tonight, is they're not even all there yet. So all this is happening, Kabul's falling, and there's still no troops. Not all the troops.
Yeah,
there.
you're not seeing any journalists.
Yeah,
recording it.
It's crazy. So
in Afghanistan.
Taliban are not afraid of the world superpowers. They are not afraid of the B-56 or B-52. They're afraid of the women.
The top U.S. general in Afghanistan warned last month that a Taliban takeover could allow al-Qaeda to rebuild.
If that pressure comes off, I believe they're going to regenerate, and I think it's only a matter of time before we see them assert themselves and begin to plan attacks against our homeland.
Now, as President Biden stands by his withdrawal strategy.
So two things really quick I'll just touch on because we already talked about them, but absolutely women in Afghanistan are going to be brutalized, beaten.
They're the ones I think that it's going to hit the hardest.
That's who's going to hit the hardest for sure. And I think if there's going to be anybody who's going to feel the biggest wrath of the Taliban taking over, it's going to be them and the interpreters for sure, or the supporters of the military or of the U.S.
Jeez.
And it's just incredibly sad to see that, and to know that that's what's going to happen. There's no question about it. It's already happening in the regions that the Taliban have already taken over.
Yeah.
And then the other piece to that, what General McKenzie was saying there, Admiral McKenzie was saying there, is that the Al-Qaeda is going to take over or come back or reflourish or start back up or whatever.
Yeah.
The second that this starts back up, it's 100% going to happen. You got to think too, as they were taking over all these places, the Afghan military were laying down their weapons. From what I've heard, there haven't been like major battles or major fights trying to hold ground. It was more or less just kind of, surrendering.
Yeah.
And so all the military equipment we left behind to give to the military,
they're just taking
to the
all
Afghan
of it?
military, they're taking it all. Taliban have it all.
That's
so not
crazy.
only did they get the land back, but now they have a stronger, at least what I'll say is stronger, a stronger militia, a stronger ability to fight with weapons and equipment that really could, pose a threat to the U.S. or its allies in the region.
Yeah.
We're going to continue to keep our commitment, but I do not regret my decision.
He's likely to own Afghanistan's collapse.
He owns this now completely. It isn't Donald Trump's Afghan policy, it's Joe Biden's.
It's a tragedy, and it's a tragedy that was entirely preventable.
Up until now, most Americans have supported the military withdrawal, which was initially announced last year by then President Donald Trump. But some who served in America's longest war are asking what their sacrifices were for.
I lost friends there. It's hard to understand what it was for. If this is how it ends, how do you tell veterans that it was worth it?
Why did we spend the past decade there? What was the purpose? What was the goal?
That was Tom there, obviously.
Yeah. So
on MSNBC. So that was kind of some of the interviews that I know you and Tom were on this weekend.
Yeah, and you notice there at the end, obviously they clipped that one segment, and Tom goes on to say, and this is just what the media does. I get it. We knew going into this weekend
they clip what they want.
The clip that they aired is the one that they wanted.
Yeah.
What Tom continued to say was, why were we there? Why did we fight in this war? If we weren't going to have a policy that was going to pull us out of there safely, that wasn't going to watch out for our Afghan allies. And that's what he continued to say. And I 100% agree. I mean, I understand the frustrations and the anger and the angst and everything every veteran's going through, because I feel it too.
Yeah.
I've lost many friends in Afghanistan. I've lost many friends in both Iraq and Afghanistan. So I understand the thought of, why did we do this? Why did I lose my friend? Why did, my brother or sister in arms die?
Like, what was the point?
What was the point if we were just going to, from what it appears, just strengthen the Taliban more?
Like basically give up.
Yeah. Why were we just going to give up on a war that we ended up sacrificing more than anybody else. And I get that 100%. And I think this is why I wanted to do this episode, was to just tell all the veterans out there, no matter what you think policy wise, it doesn't matter. What does matter is the reason you fought, the reason why you were involved in this conflict was to serve and protect our nation. You did that. We had 20 years of really no major terrorist attack on American soil from outside the US. We had 20 years of safety and security for majority of the world because we didn't allow terrorism to flourish.
Yeah.
We, as veterans, decided to sign up because we wanted to serve with our brothers and sisters. We absolutely did that. We were there hand in hand, arm in arm, taking the fight to the enemy, to eliminate the threat, to make sure that we were there for each other, and to really build a stronger bond than anybody could imagine.
What do you think, personally, in your opinion, you think is going to happen now?
So again, I don't know enough. I'm not an intelligence person, so it's hard for me to say. I personally knew that this was going to happen. I thought the Taliban were going to take over again. I thought if we didn't have some sort of presence in the region somehow, that this was going to continue, like this was going to exactly happen. I don't think anybody expected it to happen this fast, obviously. I don't think anybody could have predicted that. And then I also wouldn't have ever guessed that we would have just stood idly by to watch it happen. And it's frustrating to see that. And it's frustrating to know that. And then it's frustrating to know, especially that we had a policy to, and that we did this in Iraq as well, is to spend the money on the equipment, bring it overseas, train our partners in the equipment, leave it with them in hopes that they use it for their own safety and security.
Yeah, now it's overtaken.
And now it's fallen into the hands of the enemy. They have probably billions of dollars worth of equipment that we basically, we gave to the Afghani government, and then they basically handed it over to the Taliban.
Jeez.
So it's not going to be pretty. Don't know what's going to happen in the next couple of days. I don't know what's going to happen in the weeks, months. May take years.
Yeah. Let's change that background. We'll get rid of it. Give you guys a nice background to look at.
Yeah.
Instead of MSNBC.
Instead of Chuck Todd.
But yeah, it is crazy when you think about where it's going to go. You know, now that they've got a lot of equipment of ours, you know, it's sad to see that they had to give all that up and just hand it over, but who knows? Oh, what is that playing in the background?
I don't know. Oh.
You got your phone still on.
I was like, where is that coming from?
I hope you guys like this week's Raw episode.
Yeah. And the last thing I wanted to say, and especially to all the veterans, is everybody who served, whether it was in a support role or a direct combat role, you did your job.
Yeah.
You did exactly what you signed up for. You accomplished your mission that was ahead of you directly. Whatever happened in the last 20 years, you should not regret or look back to or think, why the hell did this happen? Why did we do this? I think it's important to instead think of the last 20 years as the most intense way to, honestly, in a certain sense, better yourself and better those around you, and to live the life that maybe your brothers and sisters couldn't live because they passed or they didn't make it back.
Yeah, I think that's a hard thing that a lot of veterans are facing right now. But it's like you said, and I think it's like, you know, it's me repeating you, but it makes a lot of sense when you think about that. Maybe there's just that one person that you could have changed their life.
Mm-hmm.
There could have been that one person that you never know that you gave their freedom to, or you helped them leave an area or be with their family, or, you know, just to touch their hearts, and that could have changed their life. So I look at it from the outside, like, you know, we were at war for 20 years, but there's a lot of areas in those 20 years that you could have saved many lives, and only one really matters. And so it's kind of, I wouldn't look at it almost as, you know, it's what's done is done and it's not worth it. I think it's opposite. And I think that everybody needs to have more of that kind of positive mindset, even though it's a rough time.
Yeah, it's a very rough time. And the bigger thing to me is like, if we are self-defeating, if we defeat ourselves over whatever policy unfolded in Afghanistan, that is just adding to our enemy's victory lap.
Mm-hmm.
They are just sitting back and they're going to laugh and they're going to consume this and they're going to say, look at us. We beat them. We didn't just beat the government. We beat every person that served for the government.
Yeah.
And we cannot allow that to happen. Instead, you know, I put this in my Facebook post, is we have to stay strong and unite. We have to be together. We have to support each other.
Mm-hmm.
If you are a veteran, you're hearing all this news unfolding, and it's affecting you, and you know that you're just pissed off, or you're angry, or you're sad, or whatever emotions you're going through, like, reach out to somebody, talk to your buddies, talk to, you know, friends and family, whatever the case may be, but like, talk to somebody, get those frustrations out, like, yell. It doesn't matter. I understand you're pissed off. Mm-hmm. We all should be pissed off. But the last thing that we should do is, what I don't want to come out of this is, we can't have a second wave of, you know, the last 20 years it has affected us. Obviously, I don't like talking about this topic at all. I really don't. I hate it, but I feel like I have to address it, is that 22 service members or veterans, you know, commit suicide a day. This should not be an event that's going to see an uptick in that.
Not even one.
Not even one. If anything, I want this to be the catalyst that drives veterans to unite again and say, we're fucking pissed off.
Yeah.
Like, we are incredibly pissed at the way that this unfolded.
Mm-hmm.
We feel like it was for nothing, but we know that it wasn't. And the reason why is, when I look to my left and to my right, I see my brother and my sister there, and I'm excited that I get to spend another day with them.
Yeah. Well, we can obviously share a little bit about the book before we wrap. For people that are just listening, maybe they haven't tuned in, they don't really know much about this book, but obviously, with a bitter week, I should say, with everything going on, you know, we truly want to honor at least 71 veterans that we have.
Well, we should honor every veteran that's, you know, served in the last 20 years, but
well, I mean that because we can't fit everybody in the book.
But hopefully this is enough of a wide, you know, pretty wide margin. We've really tried to capture the entire military, the entire veteran. Like, we've really, really tried hard. And I'm excited because this week I received these books.
Yeah.
And I was able to open the box and look at it, and you had the same reaction I did. You were like, oh, started flipping through it.
I drove up like right away.
Yeah.
I knew I had to come up for this weekend because I knew we were going to be on the news, or Dan and Tom were going to be. I needed to be here to help. And I knew we wanted to do some kind of podcast for you guys before we get back to our regular schedule next week. We have a guest. We thought it was important to do this, but I remember you got the book shipped to your work, and they came in pallets, and I was like, wait, you've seen them? Oh, without me? Oh man, I need to come up and check them out. But they're big, and it's awesome to, you know, finally see the stories that, you know, we photographed and we interviewed. And I think that for those of you listening that may want to help a veteran, or you're a fellow veteran and you actually want to read these stories, and maybe that helps distract, I don't know, the shit that's going on right now, or it helps you not even just distract you, but to put you to a kind of a higher level, a higher mindset of seeing that these veterans have been through this shit like you have, but then they've gone on a more positive route in their life.
Well, I think it goes to directly my last point that I was saying, you know, before we started talking about the book, is like, use these stories to reflect on. Like, use these stories, like, every single one of them has a life lesson, a mantra, or something that they've learned from their experience in the military. And I think that's the other important part that we can't forget, is like, there are so many skills and knowledge and wisdom and leadership and teamwork, all those different things that you learned in the military that you didn't just vanish or didn't just disappear, or like, you got a certain level of experience and exposure and training that nobody else in the population has. You know, even other veterans prior to the last 20 years haven't had the same level of exposure and needing to react and know how to process things and everything, just you have a completely different mindset. And so the stories in here are definitely going to highlight that.
Yeah, definitely.
They 100% do. And you'll learn something different from every single veteran. And it was something we've talked about multiple times, but I was super excited to see. I thought I was going to hear a lot of common stories.
Yeah.
A lot of the same stuff. We have truly 71 unique stories.
Yeah. Yeah. Not one is alike. And I mean, for, those of you thinking that it's a book, I mean, really it's a giant coffee table book. This is a museum quality, probably, ego and pride aside of how happy I am with this thing. It's probably one of the nicest books that I've had the pleasure of working on and being a part of. And this is obviously our first book. So we're obviously very stoked on it. And, we hope that the rest of you are, but.
All right. We just had Tony Brooks on a few episodes ago, and here's his book. By the way, go check it out. Leave No Man Behind. It's an incredible story of his and his firsthand accounts of during objective
Operation Red Wings.
Yeah. Operation Red Wings 2. Thank you, Bo. Operation Red Wings 2. And so it's an incredible book, but look at the size difference. Like, this is already a pretty decent book.
Yeah, his book's pretty big.
Look at the size difference of the book. So when we say it's a coffee table, like, it's no joke. You could smack somebody with this thing and knock them out.
It's got some weight. You can hear that. For those of you that are just listening to audio, you're not going to be able to see how big this book is.
If you want to not necessarily show too much, but
let me see if we
flip
can
through some of it.
Oh, this is gonna be hard of an angle. Let's see here.
I'll hold the other side.
Oh man, that's gonna be awkward as hell.
I mean,
I'm trying to show.
It's no joke.
Some of it, but yeah, there's pictures all throughout on every single page. You've got the portraits that I took all on film, and you've got photos of each veteran from their deployments overseas. So for those of you listening again that are interested in it, you can go on 20yearwar.com. Again, that's 20yearwar.com. If you're not interested, that's fine. But if you know anybody that served, or you have friends or family that have, or you just want to help spread the word, again, we're very proud of it. It's our first book, and we'd love to have you guys come along on this journey and share with as many people as you know.
I think JC Glick, we actually just were on a podcast with him. He's one of the veterans in the book, but he had an excellent point the other day. Is even if you didn't directly serve or don't know somebody who was directly involved in the conflict, whether you do or you don't, this is an excellent book to purchase and gift to somebody. So if you think, somebody who served in the last 20 years or even prior to the last 20 years, this is not just an autobiography. It is an incredible photo book, and it's a history of what each of these veterans have gone through.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's a living history through them. It's from their perspective. And I think it's just going to connect with a lot of veterans. And then the people that are trying to understand, especially right now, as the 20-year war comes to an end.
Businesses, the civilian
just
sector,
like understanding what veterans are going through or what they experienced in the last 20 years. This is an excellent way to kind of get that inside perspective.
Yep. Yeah, I think so too. And I think it'll be good for maybe even businesses to have, posted up and
grab that coin too.
And then there's 2 editions, not to overwhelm you guys, but there's a standard edition. So like what we just held up, if you just want the book, you can purchase that. But there's also a very limited edition that's hand signed by us 3 authors. It also comes with a protective slipcover. It comes with this little challenge coin. It's going to be hard to see it, but it's a double-sided coin. It says Global War on Terrorism, has a limited edition number on it, and it has the cover of the book engraved on one side. It's a really nice coin.
Yeah.
Again, another item that's got a lot of weight. This thing is like solid, almost like brass.
Yeah.
But what's unique is that, and it comes with a leather flag patch you can put on, clothing or a hat, but it just gives somebody that wants more of like a collector's item for the home. There's 2 different packages that you guys can select.
Yeah. And last thing before we jump off here that I want to announce to people is we are incredibly excited and honored to announce that we will be launching our book at the National Veterans Memorial Museum in Columbus, Ohio.
On September 11th.
On September 11th. So we've kind of hinted on it a few times before, but we've kind of hashed out and finalized a lot of details with the museum staff and it's going to be an incredible event. It's going to be a gala level event. You know, we're going to have cocktail hour, book signings, guest speakers, a panel event where you can talk to not only us, the authors, but then also talk to some of the veterans who are in the book. We're inviting the public. We want people from the outside to experience this. We want them to.
It's going to be fun.
Engage. We really want this to be an engaging event. We don't want it to just be, you know, let me first start by saying the reason we have it on September 11th, obviously, is that's the date that kicked off. And there's a lot of things to think about on September 11th. But we are really dedicating our time of remembrance to that date by honoring the people that decided to serve and protect the United States after September 11th, or decided to extend and stay in after September 11th.
Yep.
And so it's going to be an incredible event. We're really excited about it. The National Veterans Memorial Museum is going to be releasing more information as well as tickets to the event.
Probably this week.
This week.
This podcast launches.
Yeah, it will be this week when the podcast launches. So if you're hearing this, Google National Veterans Memorial Museum, go to their website, look at, they'll have an event page, they'll have tickets to purchase. If for whatever reason, by the time this podcast comes out, you don't see that, just hit us up. And as soon as the link comes live, we'll push it out.
Yeah. Not to complicate it, but, for those of you that don't know, obviously, you know, the 20-Year War is our book that we created, but our company is United Valor. So if you're not already following us on Instagram, I hate doing this kind of plug shit, but it's We Are United Valor. Again, We Are United Valor. Yeah. I'm literally saying this to you guys because if you don't see it on the National Veterans Memorial Museum website, come message us on Instagram, follow along, because we're always posting updates.
Yeah. And the last thing I will say, for a shameless plug, but this is really important, I feel like.
People are going to be like, I'm not fucking listening to you guys anymore.
They're not going to listen to us anymore. They probably shut it off 10 minutes ago when we started talking about the book, but you know, that's fine. If you're listening this far, then obviously you're still a little interested. We are actively looking for sponsors and donors for the event. And not just the event, but we do have something else exciting to announce that we will be announcing at the event that we will be looking for sponsors and donors for. So if it's something that you're interested in, the sponsors and donors, by the way, for the event specifically, are going to be helping to pay for the veterans who are in the book to be able to travel and attend the event.
This isn't for us.
This is not for us. This doesn't go in our pockets at all. We are not getting anything. It's going directly towards the veterans, and it's making sure that they can get to the event without a cost to them. There are several veterans in the book that are very successful. Obviously, they're covering their own cost, but not everybody is. You know, there are some people who have, you know, it's going to stretch their means to be able to get out there. So we're trying to get this covered for them.
Yeah. And again, you know, obviously we're looking for sponsors, any donations help, but we, you know, like Dan said, we have quite a few veterans that would love to come. Obviously with COVID, it's really incapacitated a lot of people with their work and with funds. And obviously everybody knows who's listening to this, but we want to try our best to give back to those veterans that took the time to be a part of our book and to have them come and, you know, help commemorate the 20-year anniversary of 9/11 and be there for the event. But we'd love for you guys to be there too. Like I said, it is open to the public. I think there's a limited amount of tickets, and I think there's maybe 200. But again, as long as you're listening to this and you're following us, you'll hear all the info before anybody else.
Yeah, and last thing I'll say about it is, or last thing on the donation piece, you can contact us if you'd like to, or you can go to the contact us on the National Veterans Memorial Museum and directly contact them, because any donations are going to go through the museum. Since they are a 501c3, it'll be a tax deduction to anybody who donates or sponsors. So it's incredibly important that it goes to them, just because we want to make sure, one, that they are able to handle the nonprofit side. They get a lot more incentives than we do. But then also we want to make sure that it's going through the right people.
Yep. Yeah. And I think, you know, it'll be a lot of fun at the end of the day, and we'll share a lot of info and photos and videos for those of you, unfortunately, that can't make it. You know, stay tuned for that. But again, thank you guys for, you know, tuning in. I know it's kind of an awkward, not so usual episode this week, but I know Dan especially and myself felt it was important to at least get an episode out there where we could discuss what's going on currently in the world, especially Afghanistan. Kind of some updates with the book and our business. But next week we'll be back to our regular schedule. We'll have another veteran on to hear their story like usual. And just thank you guys for tuning in.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, if you're a veteran, you're struggling right now, reach out, talk to your fellow buddies.
Give us a call.
Give us a call, drop us a line, whatever, we'll answer it. Definitely reach out. If you're not a veteran, some veterans, like reach out to them as well and make sure that they're doing okay. Even though they're not going to want to talk about it, especially if they're a combat veteran who's been to Afghanistan. Like, trust me, this is affecting them. I don't care whatever anybody says, this is affecting them in some way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't thank you enough. And I'm glad we had this platform. We can talk about this. And I appreciate you guys listening if you did listen this far. And we're excited to see you next week.
Yeah. See you guys next week.